Peter Campion is a retired Queensland Fire and Rescue Service fire commander and fire investigator, a former Department of Social Security fraud investigator and independent researcher, a climate sceptic and energy realist, a libertarian and a fierce proponent of the traditional Australian values. Peter has been a prolific contributor to newspaper opinion columns for many years, with well over 1,000 letters published. His concerns about national developments prompted him to stand as a candidate at the 2020 election in Queensland and the 2022 federal election. Peter has been married for 38 years. His wife said feels like something like 380, but that's just between you and me, and has 5 children, the eldest being well-known journo Vikki Campion. That's the wife of Barnaby Joyce, an ex-TNT announcer. And he also has 4 grandchildren and is a long-term resident of Far North Queensland. Peter Campion is my guest. Peter, you're way up north. Tell me, how's the lack of fuel and also the rising cost of fertiliser hitting your area, and what should be done?
Well, what we do know is that we still have fuel. We're not sure how long we'll have fuel. When I was in town earlier today, they were selling diesel for $2.80 a litre, so it's actually not quite as bad as some of our fellows down south around around Vikki and Barnaby's area, for example. It's what we do also know is that a lot of fertiliser is made from gas, from liquid petroleum gas, and if we don't start to use some of our abundant domestic supply of gas for our own purposes, we're going to start running out of food. Now, you mentioned that I'm here in Tolga in Far North Queensland. We have very long supply chains. At the moment, a lot of our access is underwater. We get quite a lot of rain here in the north. It's not unusual for us to be cut off by floods. And it's not unusual for us to be unable to get into our paddocks. However, the farm life must tick along. We must, particularly with the amount of wet we're getting, we have a lot of parasites and insects attacking. I'm a small orchardist in retirement, and we got a lot of Pink's disease, a lot of sapsuckers, and it's handy to be able to get in there on the occasions it does dry out enough to support a bit of weight and deal with some of those pests with sprayers and so on. But all of that requires the inputs that come from the southern part of the state, and that requires being delivered by truck. So the more the people that are in our federal government in particular interfere with our ability to get the necessities to grow food, the closer we get to the inner city Greens voters going to the supermarket and finding that supermarkets don't magically 3D print their apples and their carrots and their kale. They're going to get hungry, and they're going to get hungry before us, because we actually can go into the back paddock and harvest a little bit for ourselves. And I'm particularly talking about food on the hoof there, which is really that's proper food. Vegetables are really just what food eats, aren't they? And so I think, as I said at Vikki and Barnaby's wedding, the father of the bride gets first speech. And as I said to the assembled luminaries there in that Walbrook Hall on that occasion, where a war is being waged against the ordinary people of Australia, and the weapon that they're using against us is they're cutting off our hydrocarbon fuels and our electricity supply, our reliable electricity supply, for no good reason, because the whole premise of their anti-CO2 argument is essentially completely flawed. Without farmers and without transport, they're going to starve in the cities, and they're going to do it tougher there when systems do collapse than we're going to way out here in the bush.
We know that Barnaby is now One Nation, and with the Nationals, but even the Nationals, when they were in government with the Liberals, there was a bit of a ignorance towards the bush, which I found quite astounding, considering that the Nationals are from the bush or regional centres. The Labor Party themselves, I'm not picking on the Labor government, others have said the same thing, that they're a bit oblivious to what's happening in the bush. So they're sort of continuing the tradition of ignorance to what goes on in the bush, but they will certainly understand that if they don't pay a little more or have a little more consideration for those on the land in a very short space of time and a time to continue, because if you don't get your fertiliser in at the right time or you don't deliver at the right time, then the city folk won't be getting any, or they'll be getting less produce at greatly increased prices. So how do we make, and you know, Barnaby's your son-in-law, how do we make this government, not whether it's Conservative or Labor, how do we make them understand that they need to have more consideration and more awareness of what goes on in the bush, because it will affect them down the line?
At this point, Mike, I think they know completely well, particularly if you look at the ages of a lot of these people, they know completely well where food comes from. They're not the brainwashed younger generation that genuinely thinks it comes from supermarkets. They know it comes from farms, and they know what inputs have to go into farms, and they know the criticality of timing, not just of fertilisation and pest control, but of planting and harvesting. They know how tough it is. This to me, and just another bio update, I ran as a 2024 candidate in the Queensland state election for One Nation. And I like to think that I encouraged my son-in-law to move in that direction, away from the Nats. The Nats and the Libs, to my mind, have been completely infiltrated by the Gramscian left. So that's Antonio Gramsci's plan of the long march through the institutions, infiltrating and subverting once respected institutions like the National Party, hollowing them out, gutting them basically, and wearing their skin as a skin suit and demanding respect that they didn't earn. So I think if you ask Vikki, she might tell you that there's probably as many lefties, if not more, in the Nationals now than there are in the Libs. And I think the Libs are sneaking up on Labor. And I think Labor have already overtaken the Greens on the left. So I think that infiltration and subversion has been going on for a very long time. I think actually what they're doing is the planned collapse of Western civilization. They know completely well that there is no substitute for hydrocarbon fuels. The whole myth of calling them fossil fuels, that's come from one particular family that's well known to everybody. I know you don't get into that too much on this channel. That's common knowledge now. People are aware that there's certain powers that be in this world that absolutely do not want Western civilization to continue on its current trajectory. And that's why, at a time where we're being flooded with additional people, additional mouths to feed, that there's these ongoing attacks on the very people that produce the food that these additional mouths need to consume. In fact, let's think about water for a minute. How long has it been since a major domestic water supply was built in Australia, as they bring in, 1 million people every couple of years? There's no logic to that. These people aren't devoid of logic. They're not devoid of rationality. They're doing it deliberately.
David Littleproud, you are right, he was very, very woke. Matt Canavan, I think, is going to be an excellent leader, and I would think future Prime Minister, providing he doesn't, sort of have the pressure, the old thumb screws in the back of his neck to make him follow the lead of what the party wants. As I said, you're in Tolga, you're in the Atherton tableland.
Yeah.
But if you head inland, you're going to some pretty sparse country. Do you have much contact with those on the flat part of Queensland compared to, and where you are at? It's beautiful, near Atherton itself. But if you, as I said, if you move out an hour or two into the centre of Australia, it gets pretty flat and hot. Do you have any idea what the locals are thinking about the effort by government, one, to consider what they do, and secondly, this current government in Canberra, on how they're mismanaging the whole fuel and fertiliser crisis?
Well, it doesn't matter whether you're in the hilly, damp part or the flat, damp part at the moment. It's not real dry out there at the present moment.
No, it's
Uh,
not. So I take that back.
we fairly universally regard our government as treating us with absolute contempt. They're not governing for us. They're not governing for the grazier or for the uh, or for the broadacre farmer. They're not governing for the orchardist around this part of the world or the cane farmer. They're I don't think they're even governing for Australians. They seem to be governing for foreigners, and this is something I've written about extensively. I've pretty much been banned from letters columns. Again, I was banned during COVID and allowed back on for a little while from about 2022 to talk about climate change again. The climate's still like this last couple of years have been just like it was in the 1970s in Cairns. But anyway, I won't go there. There's no such thing as cycles, right? They I think they're governing for a supranational body that, again, just wants to bring down what's been built. They don't like the trajectory of Western society. They don't like freedom, particularly not freedom of speech. They don't want people to be criticising them in particular or criticising the people that they might be working for. And I'm not even suggesting those people are a common religion or a well-known religion. That they seem to be a fairly secretive group with a fairly secretive religion, and their gods seem to date back to well before Abrahamic religions. And the Epstein files points to a fair bit of what's going on there. Well, that seems to be the group that our government's reporting to, and it doesn't really matter whether you're a national or a liberal or a Labor or Green. I regard them as the uni party these days with a capital UN because they seem to be more interested in what the UN wants them to do, and we know which group runs the UN, and it's not a group that anyone votes for. It's a group that seems to be anti-humanist to its very core, and consequently, that manifests as things like fuel that's creeping up on $3 a litre when food growth in this country, food growth and food transport is entirely dependent on it. And we have a superabundance of it under our feet right here. We've got more oil in the ground under Cooper Pedy in tight shale than the Saudis ever have. And the technology now exists to get that out relatively cost effectively. And that's before we go offshore off WA or drill under the Rumble Ranges near Rockhampton. We should be the richest country on earth, and I've been saying this for 20 years, we should have almost no income tax. We should be paying for our entire government, our welfare system, and everything else from the income that we produce from the mineral wealth that we have in such abundance. And yet, what does our government do? The government that we elect somehow? Yeah, well, it serves foreign interests that say, no, you can't do anything of that. And what you do dig up, we've practically got to give it away to our major companies, which we have controlling interests in. It's one big club, Mike, and we ain't in it, as the late, great George Carlin said.
He was very good too. Tell me about Tolga before we run out of time. Describe the town to us. I mean, you are in one of God's country's greatest assets, and that's the Atherton Tableland. I keep being told by Jen, next time I go to Cairns, I've got to go up to the Atherton Tableland, and which we will. But tell us about Tolga. And I mean, I think the main industry there is peanuts, which could have been, could be Canberra, because they're full of peanuts too. But your industry, you've got the edible peanuts, and you've got the beautiful Atherton Tableland. What is the appeal of Tolga?
Well, for me, when I was raising my children, well, actually, when Vikki was born, I was a fraud investigator for the Dole Office. Cairns had been about 27,000 people when my wife and I were growing up there, but it grew to, I think it was about 75,000 people, and houses were pushing $75,000 each to buy, and I think we got to about a fifth or sixth set of traffic lights, and the crowd was just too much. I wanted to move to a town that was more like the one that I grew up in, and I figured that Tolga, which at that time had 1,100 people, would take longer to grow, and I'd be able to raise my children in a fairly safe, friendly, heterogeneous environment, village environment, and that indeed was the case. So we stayed put in one house for 30 years. It grew to 8 bedrooms. I switched to the fire brigade. The industry around us was peanuts, and these days peanuts, yeah, they're still present, but not so much. We used to grow a lot of maize. There's still some maize. There's still a few seed crops around, but sugarcane is creeping in. There's more and more grazing. Uh, we've had just such a long string of wet seasons now, exactly like the 1970s, that it's making it harder for a lot of the crop farmers. Blueberries are taking off. We can't get locals to work on those. We've got to import Pacific Islanders to work on the blueberries, which seems strange when we've got so many unemployed people. But anyway, that's another set of government policies that we don't have time to unpack. But yeah, where I am on my little place, it's either grazing or small orchards or just hobby farms. Mums and dads with chickens and a couple of house cows. And it is, as you say, one of the most beautiful places. But we're also becoming a bit of a dormitory suburb for Cairns now, and also a bit of a retirement home. So you've got a lot of people that are fleeing the tyranny that they saw in Melbourne, for example, and they're selling the 3-bedroom fibro shack for $2 million and moving up here and buying a very nice place on 20 acres. And I think that pretty soon the average age up here is going to be about 70. Certainly is at the clubs. I'm a shooter, so the shooting clubs I attend, I think the average age these days is about 70. And I think the future for the farm industry is bright, but it does depend on hydrocarbon fuels, which never were fossils. Never were fossils.
I mean, the only fossil stuff is you and I.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Just one thing. Somebody wrote in, they said, does this guy sit on the front of his porch in a rocking chair with a straw hat and a shotgun on his lap?
Yeah, I do. With a twig of grass as well. I'm missing a tooth at the moment. I don't always look like a complete yokel.
No, it looks great. It looks great. You want some tobacco?
Yeah. It's my inner bogan coming out.
Hey?
It's my inner bogan coming out.
Yeah, good on you. You're true blue Australian, and you are, and you've got the flag behind you. Very proud of that. Peter, if somebody wants to get hold of you, have a natter about life, or find out where to stay or where to eat in Tolga or the Atherton Tableland. By the way, how far is Tolga out of Cairns?
Well, it's as the crow flies, about 45 kilometres, but to go there by road, it's about 90 because you've got to climb over the major part of the Eastern Range to get there. And that used to take about 61 minutes from my house in Tolga, my old house in Tolga, through to the Cairns Fire Station. Now you're looking at 90. You know, they've really dumbed those roads down, lowered speed limits, removed overtaking lanes. They're taking, over 2 years now to patch up some potholes on the Coranda Range. It's just absurd. You know, they built it in less time than that with a small bulldozer by today's standards, driven by a teenager who'd never driven one before. We've got the most incompetent bureaucrats and governments.
Just relax, breathe in.
Sorry.
And by the way, you're only whinging about the time. It really is because your Massey Ferguson that you drive into town is getting a bit old. That's all. So stop whinging. Peter Campion.
Boater, man.
Now, how does someone get hold of you, Peter? Besides, I mean, not to roll around to your house with you sitting on the veranda with a shot 12 gauge and a hat and a rocking chair, bottle of whiskey. What about if they want to just get online and have a chat to you?
Yeah, probably the easiest way at the moment is through X, formerly the app formerly known as Twitter. It's at Good As Done, or Peter Campion. I think if you search Peter Campion, my ugly mug might come up. But if it doesn't, at Good As Done, because I think as a nation we're good as done. It's going to be very hard to pull this jet airliner out of the nosedive that we're in. At 700 kilometres an hour and rapidly approaching the paddock at the foot of the hill there. It's going to take some effort of strength. And you touched on Matt Canavan before. I love Matt. He's a great guy. I've spoke to him in person a number of times. But he's not the answer to our solution. We've got to leave the uni party behind. We really do have to go in a whole different direction. One Nation's battle flag has got more flak holes from spending more time over the target than any other battle flag on the political battlefield at the moment. It's the only leader that's still standing that's been jailed for her points of view, being Pauline. And frankly, I'd much rather Barnaby as a One Nation Prime Minister than I would Matt as a Nationals Prime Minister. And that's not just because he's married to my daughter, but because the Uni Party is not the answer to the solution. The Uni Party is the problem.
Now
We've got to try something different.
You need to listen to your doctor. Just relax.
My blood pressure's under control. I gave up drinking. There's no bottle of whiskey. It's all spring water these days.
Right. Well, that's why you have high blood pressure, because you need a drink. Peter Campion, I think that's just brilliant. We'll do more of these, and we'll get some footage up of Tolga and the Atherton Tableland and talk good things and also things that would make us even better. And next time, hopefully, you'll have all your teeth. Peter Campion from Tolga.